Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining me for today's webinar titled Intelligent Agents 201, Effective Practices and Lessons Learned. We're going to get started with that in just a couple minutes. Many of you know the drill. We've got a couple of quick announcements to go through. My name is Barry Dahl. I am the Teaching and Learning Advocate at D2L. This Teaching and Learning webinar series is part of my work portfolio. So Tuesdays, 3 o'clock Eastern. Not every Tuesday, but we have quite a few lined up for the spring. And we're always looking for somebody who's willing to present on a topic of interest. So contact me if you're interested in doing that. We can put one that's not Tuesdays at 3 o'clock Eastern. That's just kind of our normal time slot. But if that doesn't work for you and you want to do it, we'll figure out a different day and time. We do have the webinar webpage that works both forwards and backwards. So you do find all of the upcoming webinars there for registration and recordings of past webinars. I might just mention briefly, if you go to that page, there are a set of filters on that page. And if you've set a filter in the past, it might still be set when you go back. So you might want to clear the filters if you're not seeing a lot of stuff, for example. So you will see both anything that's upcoming. It'll have a date on it when it's coming up, as well as the little picture and the title for any recorded webinar. So today's webinar is being recorded. It will be posted on that page probably sometime tomorrow. But since you have registered for this, you will be receiving an email sometime tomorrow that has a link to that recording as well. So the next two webinars in the Teaching and Learning series are from customers. First one, a week from today. Jen, Yinning, and Christy, all from the eCampus at the University System of Georgia, are going to talk about online learner engagement. And then 3 weeks from today, Lori Christensen from Cummings Graduate Institute is going to talk about online group work. So those are available for registration right now on the webinar's webpage. D2L Connections, we have 3 web pages up right now. The Minnesota, which happens October 9th, is not yet up, but will be coming soon. So we're accepting registrations right now for anybody who'd like to attend at Southern New Hampshire University on May 20th, or New Brunswick Community College in Moncton on May 29th, and Centennial College for the Ontario Connection in October 1st, and we're working on several other dates, but those are the only ones that are confirmed at this point. And then Fusion, we are heads down on Fusion, and we are very optimistic of our customer attendance for Anaheim. Of course, there's other things going on in the world right now, so we don't know how that's going to play out over the next month or two. But we had a near record, if not a record number of breakout proposals for Fusion 2020, and we've just kind of wrapped up that process of selecting those. And then Fusion 2021 will be in July in Toronto, Ontario. So we've got those next 2 July major events that are offered. Sally asked if there's any scholarships. No, we don't offer that. We do have different types of discounts. First of all, connection events are free, but also for Fusion, the presenters get a significant discount. There are early bird discounts, and there are things like that. All right, so we're going to get started with the webinar for today on Intelligent Agents 201. Last week was Intelligent Agents 101. If you didn't attend that, that's all right. This can stand alone. It kind of look at some different things as well as some other examples of intelligent agents. So there'll be a little bit, actually. You'll see a couple of the things emphasized again this week if you were here last week. Otherwise, they should work one, both, or neither, I guess. So we're going to start with an example. Last time we looked at, I think, 2 or 3 different intelligent agents and kind of how you get started with them and that sort of thing. So let's look at an agent where we're going to set 2 different release conditions. And so here's the situation. We're going to send an email to students to recognize the improvements that they've made on some assessments. So we're actually going to combine 2 release conditions where the student did relatively poorly on the first assessment and then they showed significant improvement on the second one. That would trigger this intelligent agent. It's going to send them a congratulations email from you, the instructor. We could do that in anything that's graded basically, but we'll use quizzes as the example for this. And so let me pop open the browser here. All right, so we're going to jump into the Intelligent Agents tool. And I'll go ahead and try to bump that up just a little bit for you. But we're going to create a new agent. So I click the big blue new button. Every agent needs to have a name. All right, so we're going to kind of come back to some editing here in just in a little bit when we talk about some of the effective practices. But I'm just going to put a quick name on this: improvement from Q1 to Q2. So that's what I'm going to be looking at, is quiz 1 versus quiz 2. I'm going to go ahead and leave this description blank here for a minute, and that's not one of my effective practices, so we will be coming back to it. But we're going to look at the criteria that we're going to set up now, and you can set it up for whether they've logged into D2L, whether they've entered your course, or that's not what we're doing. We are attaching release conditions. So there are two buttons here. You can attach existing release conditions. That means anything you've already created as a release condition, you could use it again if that made sense. It doesn't make sense in this situation because I haven't created these before. So I'm going to create a new release condition. Oops, sorry about that. Let me see if I can get that out of there. All right. So we looked at this list last time of all the different things, all the different release conditions that you can apply in an intelligent agent. And here we're going to go down to quizzes, and we're going to take a look at score on a quiz. Because we're going to find students who did poorly on the Module 1 quiz. And I'm going to say, you can do this any way you want to. I'm just kind of winging it here as I go. I'm going to say that they got below 65% on quiz number 1. And your mileage may vary. Maybe you want something else. So that's a release condition that will trigger this intelligent agent. But I want 2 release conditions, so I do it again. Still, I want a score on a quiz, but I'm going to look at quiz number 2. So the student didn't do real well on quiz number 1, but then they did better, and let's say, pick your number. I'm just going to say 80%. So they scored below 65% on quiz 1, then they scored above 80% on quiz 2, and if both of those conditions are met, then it's going to trigger this agent, which is going to send that student an email. All right, so under the actions, we can either take the action the first time it's satisfied or every time. Well, they're only going to take quiz 1 and 2 once, so I probably don't really need to worry about this, but I would only want this to go 1 time, so I'm going to leave it there. I'm not changing any user enrollments with this, but I am going to have it send an email. Last time we looked at the settings to make sure that you've customized the from and the reply to addresses so that it's not the black hole, so to speak. And so we're going to create this email. We're going to send it directly to the student. So initiating user is the replace string for that. So we did talk about replace strings a little bit last time. But initiating user with the curly braces and properly formed is how the email address for each student who triggers this will populate. If you wanted to, you could add yourself in here. And I probably would, not necessarily all the time, but it's early in the semester and here's a student, and I don't know that you're gonna get like a lot of these. And so it could very well be that you want the heads up too, rather than going in and looking at the grade book and seeing who did well and who didn't do well the last time. You could just get basically the same kind of a notification here through email that says this student had the improvement there. And so with the subject line, and I've already written this out, so I'll just pop it in here. And same thing with the body. And so I've got an email here that is going to tell them that congratulations are in order. I see that you did much better on quiz 2 than you did on quiz 1. And yada, yada, it's gonna keep getting harder. Good luck the rest of the way. Here's my office hours, whatever else you wanna tell them. And that should be good to go. And then the other thing would be to finish it off with scheduling. And so if I don't schedule it at all, then it's basically a manual agent, which means I would need to come in and push the button for it to run. So I do want it to run. So I'm going to set a schedule and I want it to run by itself. And because, again, this is only going to happen one time after they've completed quiz 2, I really don't have to set start and end dates. It's going to kind of be dictated by the quiz dates. You know, this would not be triggered until after they've completed quiz 2, and then only if they get a better score on quiz 2. And so I'm just going to say, do it every day, and it should catch everybody who qualifies, basically. So just to review, I set an agent name. I determined the course activity, the release conditions, which was the lower score on Module 1 quiz and the higher score on Module 2 quiz. If both conditions are met, then it's going to send them this email to the initiating user. That's their email address. I'll get a CC of that email, and they get a little congratulatory thing from me. All right. So couple of questions. Can you modify the conditions, say change to 80 instead of 65? You would just need to create another one. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save and close this, and I'm going to come back into it after it's closed. Okay, so here is the one I just created, improvement from Q1 to Q2. And so the question was about those release conditions. Because I created those 2 release conditions, they are now on my list of created or whatever. It's an existing condition. But if I wanted that to be, whatever you just said, I forget, I probably have to create a new. You can't just edit the existing one, you have to create a new one. And if you did want to change this, you would X out one of these and create a new one. If you didn't want it to be less than 65%, you want it to be less than 60, then you would need to change that release condition. So the question is, if you skip the criteria, well, the release condition is the criteria. That's what it's looking for. So the question from Doug is, if you're skipping as in the first example, why not just create a release condition in the quiz? Well, the release condition in the quiz would release something, but not an intelligent agent, not an email of congratulatory praise. So I'm not sure if I'm missing something there, but this is different than any release condition I could set on the quiz itself. And Lynn's asking a question about how I made that email so quickly, and we're actually going to look at that in just a little bit. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to save and close it. Because this was an enabled agent, it would say anything you've done now, it's going to affect that. And it doesn't matter because it hasn't run yet, but it would matter coming up. So initiating user as the email address for any of these agents is whichever student, one or more students, trigger that agent, they would get an email sent to them from the email address that is attached to their account in Brightspace. So that was a question from Dee on how it determines an email address. All right, we are going to come back to that in just a minute, but let's take a look at some of these effective practices. As I say, I've been using intelligent agents for over 10 years, and these are things that work for me. I always like to give the disclaimer, your mileage may vary, or you might just find some of these aren't your cup of tea, but they are mine. All right, so I mentioned this briefly in the webinar last week, and that has to do with who that email goes to. And so most people kind of have a default thinking on intelligent agents that is exactly what I just did, which is create an agent that sends an email to the student. And in the example that I just used, I don't have any issue with doing that. If a student really triggers that email, I think that it's great for them to get a little email where I say, hey, way to go, I noticed that you improved your score, keep it up. But there's lots of other situations where I don't really choose that go directly to the student. That's not who I want to get the initial notification on this. I want to get the initial notification on a lot of this. So as it says on the left side, if you send it to yourself, you have one more chance to decide whether or not you want to contact that student. I gave an example or two of this last time, but there are many times when I may want to make sure that I'm going to communicate something to the student and that I want to communicate it to the student. So basically, I'm using the intelligent agent as a notification to myself. And then I decide, do I do anything else? Sometimes though, yeah, it's perfectly fine to go directly to the student. So I think you really have to kind of think about the ramifications of each one that you're dealing with and figure out what's best. All right, so this is going to help with a couple of the questions that have popped in here. I started using text expanders when I learned about them. It was actually at a Fusion conference, probably about 8 or 9 years ago is my best guess, or I don't know, quite a while ago. My friends Audrey and Brandon, Audrey's in Tennessee and Brandon used to work with her, but now he lives in California. But they did I think it was even a poster session on using text expanders. And I've used text expanders now for a long time whenever I have kind of repetitive things that I need to say. I've also found them to be real helpful in the example I just used of creating that intelligent agent, because I was using a text expander in there. And what it does is it allows you to create some text, but then when it comes time to use it, all you really have to do is a short little keystroke combination that you've created yourself, and it writes it out for you. So you can see some of the top five uses that Brandon and Audrey talked about in that session a long time ago, but it's oftentimes used for things like help desk and the like. Just imagine if you were working at a help desk and the 44th time today that you get the question about how I don't know how to log in, you're not going to write out an email for all of those things. The old-fashioned way is to copy and paste. You've got your standard answer in some document, and you copy it and you paste it into an email or whatever you're sending, and it goes. That works, but a text expander is even easier to use than that. So here's the one that I use, and I've actually used a few over the years, but this one I've been using now for a few years, and I like it. It has some advantages. One is that it's free. Another one is that it works cross-platform. So I'm a Windows user, but if you're an Apple user, it works there too. It works on Android phones. I think they might even have a Linux version, whatever. There's quite a few different ways that you can use Phrase Express, and it works great. I'll show you how it works, but there's the web address for it, phraseexpress.com, and so let me demonstrate. I'm going to have to open a thing or two here, so bear with me. It's kind of hard to see these screens. All right, so I got to get my stuff out of the way. All right, so this is what Phrase Express looks like, the window of Phrase Express. And you just saw me use actually a couple of them when I was doing that email. Now that's not an email I'm going to write over and over, but I made these phrase snippets so I could do that in the webinar really quickly and easily. So that the subject line for that quiz improve email and then the body for it was already written out. And then I have a little auto text that once I type that, it puts it in. So let me show you how that works. I'll open an email here. And if I was sending an email, now this is an Outlook, but it works the exact same way if I was sending an email in D2L, but in this case, I was actually putting it in to the intelligent agent. So I put in my code. In this case, I use things, you need to use something that you'll never kind of normally type, or you'll replace something that you didn't intend to replace. So I use a little code that it works for me. You may develop your own code. But in this one, it says IAQ3. Well, that's because it's intelligent agent for IA. Quiz related, because I've got, this was a quiz type of intelligent agent. And this is the third different snippet that I have. As soon as I complete that, and actually it's the space bar, then it puts in what I wanted it to say. And I had a similar but different code, IAQ4, for the body. I see that you did much better on the quiz, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. Now, I wouldn't write one of these out in order to make an intelligent agent. I did for today because it made the webinar go better. But let's just take a different example here. And this is where I mentioned you might want to send yourself the email notification. So if I had sent myself this notification of which students did better, then I could just open my email, and just this quickly, I could have written an email to them saying, hey, congratulations. All I need to do is put their email address in here and click send. And so I have used that a lot with intelligent agents, where the intelligent agent told me that something had happened in the course, and I've already written out the snippet for it, and I send it. Now we're going to see another example of that here in just a minute. And so maybe that'll help if you are still trying to figure out what else is going on here. Okay, so effective practices number 3. This used to be 2 different ones, but I combined them together. And so basically they contradict each other. One says use them sparingly. And part of that is that you can overdo this. I've seen people who thought they would set their entire course up so that every communication came out of an intelligent agent. I think that's kind of nutty. And I don't know that autopilot is really the way that your course should be run. But on the other hand, as your class sizes become larger, if your class size becomes large or is a large one, the intelligent agents can be even more useful. So then I would use them more. So I say pick the important times to use them, but boy, you sure can get benefits out of intelligent agents when you have a lot of students to communicate with. So basically that's saying you'll pick your spots, but sometimes there might be a lot of spots and sometimes there might only be a few. Number 4 says carefully consider the implications of manual versus automatic running of the agent. So an automatic agent is like the one I just set up. It was scheduled to run. It would be triggered by the student who did the improvement on quiz 2. And I don't have to worry about going in and running it. It runs by itself. That's an automatic agent or scheduled agent. Manual is where I have to go in and I need to push the button in order to make that run. And there are times when timing is of the essence, and that maybe that's exactly what I want to do, is go in and push the button so I get a report, or that the students get notified, or I get notified at an exact time that I need it. And you can do both as well. But it's not, scheduling is great for things that aren't really necessarily time, not intensive, but time specific. And the manual is the way to go if it is. All right, so we're going to go back to the page because I created an agent and I didn't put a description in. And so Iris was saying, didn't you say description was a good idea last time? And yes, I did. And so we're going to look at why here now. The agent name and description fields, you want to use those for your own benefit. So I like to describe what the agent is going to do. It's basically telling myself what I did without relying on my memory, I guess you could say. And so if I can get the browser to pop back up here, we'll go back into that page. Okay, so here's the agent list page. This is the one that I just created. Notice it's got the title there. It's a link so I can jump into it. It did actually run a minute ago, but didn't find any users because nobody's taken quiz 2 in this course yet, and they didn't improve anyway. But notice the difference here between, for example, this one, where I've got all this information. It sends the email to the student and it CCs the instructor, blah, blah, blah. It only checks once. Start and end dates are set. There's a lot of info at a glance for me to see in here. And so in this particular case, if I tell you, I'm having a hard time with my computer. Too many windows open here. Let me try to get this. Okay, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to put in a description so I don't have to remember what this is. And maybe I can remember, but I'm going to err on the side of helping myself with a description. And so this is what we set up. Emails to the student, it CCs to the instructor. After the quiz due date, but prior, oh, well, that's actually a different one. Let me back up. We would have to write this one out because I haven't written it out yet. And this could be no date set. And I'm gonna put a little more information in there, but I grabbed the wrong one. So let me just go back here to the page for a second. You'll notice that I had another one where I didn't have a description, and that's because that's the one I intended to use for this example, where there was a reminder about an end date for the quiz. No description in there, but this is what the description should be. The email is being sent to the student, CC to the instructor. It's after the due date on the quiz, but prior to the end date. It reminds the student of the last opportunity to complete the quiz, and then make sure you check your dates every term before enabling this if you copy it from one term to the next. So those are just a couple of notes to me so that I can remember what's in there on this page. So for example, right here is the one that I just added. Rather than a blank underneath the title, it tells me what I want to know. So that's part of this page. The other part of the page, you might notice that here I've got 1, 2, 3. I have these numbered. And the reason is that they show up by alphabetical order, although numbers come before letters. And so I find that I'm a linear thinker when it comes to intelligent agents. I don't think that's always true, but it is here. As I make agents that kind of walk me through the course, kind of week by week or month by month or whatever. So the first time a student enters my course, well, that's going to be the first agent that's triggered in this course. So I kind of want it at the top of the list. So to do that, this is one that we created last time. And if this would be, let's say that it's the 4th agent in this particular semester. And so by adding the 4, it now is in order that I want it to be. And I could do just one more for an example. And now I've got, this is number 5 because it's actually the same one. It could be 4A if I want it to be because it's a version. This is what we set up last time of students who got a high score on the quiz and get 1 email, students who got a middle score and got 1 email, and then the third one we didn't do, which was you got a low score and you get a different email. And I could bunch those together. They would have alphabetically been together, but they wouldn't have been in the right spot, basically, for my thinking my way through the course. And just my own personal preference, something like this, missing in action, and this is one that we set up last time where students who have not been in your course for 7 days or whatever number of days you want, I might give that a high number. I just kind of know that's always there, but it can be at the bottom of my list. I'm happy to have it, well, it will be at the bottom after I get everything else numbered, but I don't need that in a particular place. I use it all the time, so I just kind of know that it's there. I know that it's running, and I don't need it in any particular place, so I probably put it at the bottom, and that's just me. All right, let me pause for a second, see if there's anything that needs to be answered right now. Well, David, is there a place where we can manage release conditions for the course overall? I'm not sure what you're asking, David. Manage release conditions for the course. You mean like change them without going into each individual thing? So this is what I think you're asking, David. Is there a place kind of like manage dates tool where you have access to all the dates in the course, most of the dates in the course, and similar that any place you've set a release condition, then you would be able to change it? That's kind of what I'm guessing. A release conditions bulk tool. No, great idea. Why don't you add that to the pie? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, others out there, I know David does, in the pie, then we're going to talk about that in just a little bit as well. Emily, are going to answer your question about copying in just a minute. And so we have a quick question here. What's this agent? This is the one that was set up last time. I'll show it real quickly. The very first time the student has entered the course, they get this. So that's set as a criteria of the first time that a student has accessed the course, they get an email from me saying, hey, welcome. And whatever else I want to tell them, a little introductory stuff, make sure you do this, make sure you do that. But basically, whatever you would want to send that student the first time they walk into your classroom, or in this case, the first time they clicked into your online classroom. That would be the type of email that is sent in that case. All right, back to the effective practices here. This is the example we just looked at, but one thing I'll just point out here is that this page is yours. Students never see this page. Somebody would have to have high level, instructor or designer access or above before they would ever see this page. And so basically this is your page to deal with. And that's why I put your name on it, put your descriptions on it. Whatever it is you want it to look like, it's up to you. Number 6. So this is going to kind of circle back to the text expander. If you are setting up intelligent agents that are going to send messages to yourself, which again, I do that a lot with these. And if you expect to get a lot of them, all right, so let me just stop there for a second. Let's use the example we just set up. Students who didn't do very well on quiz 1, but they did a lot better on quiz 2, and you've CC'd yourself on the email that they get saying, hey, way to go. You know, you're not going to get a ton of those emails. There's going to be some, typically, you know, where students show some improvement, and that's good to catch your attention, just like, you know, you're sending praise to the student. But I don't know that I would create a rule for that, because I'm not expecting that to happen too often. But I have used intelligent agents before where I get lots of notifications. And so I like to manage my email. And now I'm not talking about the D2L internal email. I'm talking about the email address that you're getting these agents sent to you from. And so here's where I would set up a rule in this case, Outlook, but just about any email program works the same way, where I would set up a rule that will automatically move messages into a folder for me. Messages that come out of an agent, one or more agents. So one time when this was really helpful, and so was the text expander, was when a few years ago, Karen Sorensen and I ran WAMO. WAMO was a MOOC for online educators. And so I got hundreds of notifications of people who had completed their checklist. By completing their checklist, which is a release condition, they were indicating that they had done all the assignments and they were ready to get their certificate for the course. And so I created a rule that would move messages into a folder anytime that WAMO checklist was in the subject. So if somebody else sent me an email that somehow said WAMO checklist in the subject line, then yeah, it would get caught too. But that's highly unlikely. And by the way, it never, ever happened. And so what happens in this case is that I have this folder that's set up in my Outlook, and automatically the messages that come out of the intelligent agent go into that folder. So they don't kind of clutter my inbox. You know, I don't want to miss an important message because I have 12 of these things sitting there that I just need to pay a little attention to. Okay, so thanks, Liz. The what would happen after they completed the checklist and the agent was triggered, it would send me an email, kind of like what you see on the screen here. It says the following learner has completed the certificate tracking checklist. And which certificate, because there was honors and highest honors. And I would basically, because this was a manual type of process, you know, they would click the checklist button saying they'd done things, but I needed to go in and make sure that they actually had grades, you know, that they had feedback on their assignments. And that was usually just a quick, I look at the grade book, they've got a score in 5 or 10 of the, I think it was 4 or 8 activities, and boom, that's, you know, good to go. So they need a certificate. And so I would release their certificate, and I then would send them an email, and I would use that text expander that, again, I was sending dozens. I don't remember how many of these emails, maybe only 3 or 4 a day, but like every day for a while. And so I would use the text expander that basically wrote that email for me in about 3 seconds and send. And so the rule helped me organize the emails that I received, and the text expander helped me reply to those emails. Now, both of these things are outside of Brightspace, so they are kind of extra tips for you. All right, let's look at the last one. This is kind of a newer effective practice. I've talked about it a little bit, but I think that it deserved to be on the list, so I put it on the list. So don't repeat a notification that's already available to your students. So within Brightspace, students can opt in to a whole list of notifications. Some do, some don't, some do more than others, whatever. But I'll just give you an example. The one that's highlighted there with a little purple arrow says assignments, that the assignment due date or the end date is 2 days away. So any student who wants to be reminded that their due date is close can opt in to either get an email or a text message or both that says, hey, your assignment is due in 2 days. And then you say, well, I'm going to set up an intelligent agent that reminds students who have not submitted to the assignment folder that their assignment's due in 2 days. And I say, no, don't do that. So the effective practice is to not repeat something that the students can already get a notification on. And that's kind of related to what I said before of pick the best spots to use intelligent agents. And repeating a potential notification is not one of those best spots. All right. So then let's take a step back. I am a huge fan of intelligent agents and have been from day one, basically. But they are not always the right answer. So I say do a little sanity check to make sure that this is the right form of communication. I just mentioned the D2L notifications. If there's notifications out there, that's great that the student can get. A news announcement. So think about how it's different. If you put a news announcement on your homepage of your course, students could get a notification of that because it's one of the options of that. I would not send I wouldn't use an intelligent agent to announce that I've put a news announcement out there. I think that's kind of nutty. But the other thing is that the news announcement for kind of normal types of stuff that applies to everybody makes more sense to me than something that has to be triggered by everybody in an intelligent agent. Intelligent agents are okay for things that would be triggered by everybody, like first time they enter the class. Hopefully everybody does that. But a lot of the other things are to pick those places where some students meet criteria and others don't, so you can more customize the communications. Sometimes you just have to write a personal email. And then things like discussion boards. You know, I don't think this replaces a discussion board at all because, for example, an email is you to them, right? One-to-one. And as opposed to a discussion board where you can have threads and multiple participants, et cetera. Those are very different ways of communicating. And so I wouldn't overlook the value in those other ways. And which just kind of stresses again that intelligent agents are not everything. They don't replace a lot of those things. All right, so we're going to go create another new agent. And I'm asking you what the agent should do, but I already answered the question for you. Here it is. We're going to take a look at what happens when a student earns a badge in a class. Could be a certificate, but I'll say badges anyway. So if you issue a badge, or if a badge is released based on conditions that were satisfied, the next time that student goes into the course, there's a little pop-up that says, hey, you got a badge. And as I say, that's about it. So that may or may not be good enough in some cases. I can think of cases where maybe they've earned a significant badge or something, and that I may want to send them, again, a congratulatory email and maybe a little bit more information than what shows up in that pop-up, which is very little information except, hey, you've got a badge. So we're going to create a more congratulatory email after they earn a badge, and we're going to jump back into Brightspace in order to do that. All right, so it'd be nice if I could remember what I wanted to say on this one. Let me try to find it here. All right. So there's some badges in this course, and I just know that one of them is Jumpstart. Jumpstart congrats is probably all I need to say in my agent name. And I would put in a description of whatever it is, and I'll come back later and figure that out. I'm just not going to take the time to do it right now. So when I set the criteria here, I'm going to go to release conditions again, create and attach a new release condition. And I'm looking for awards, and there's only one choice, award earned. And so, boom. And it says, well, here's your 3 awards. Which one are you talking about? I'm talking about this one, the Jumpstart badge. And I just grabbed it, so it's not my badge, but it's video demonstrations. And so let's just say that a student earned the Jumpstart badge. So they've already done something else that earns them the badge, and then that badge triggers this intelligent agent that will send them an email. So I click yes, and I'm going to, again, put in initiating user. I could, but I'm not going to CC myself here. And congratulations, you're off to a good start. And then I've got something else here. not just a good start, but a jump start. You got a badge to prove it. Tells them what they can do with the badge. They can send, if it's the first time they earn a badge, they might not know about it, so they can send it to their e-portfolio. They can send it to Badger. They can do whatever they want to do. This is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but that's just the way I roll. And so, yeah, put in there whatever you would like to say so that when the student earns the badge, they're also getting some additional. And, I could also, I have a little congratulations graphic that I could add. I'm just not going to do it right now, but I could do it with the photo thing here to grab a computer, a graphic off of wherever I have it. So I could put that in there. And, the scheduling on this, I don't, again, I don't need to have really start and end dates. They're only going to earn this badge one time. And so if they've earned the badge, it's going to take action. And by scheduling it, that just allows it to run on its own, to happen on its own. So I don't have to go in and manually do it. So I would just go ahead and say again, run daily, every day, and that should do it. I don't have to worry about ending this, because if the student ever earns the badge, then they would get it. Okay, so here's what I just created was Jumpstart Congrats. And you can see it's at the bottom of the list because I didn't number it. I haven't really put in a good description yet, but that's the intelligent agent that I would have created here to send an email with more information after the student has earned a badge. So that's that. All right, so I also, over the years, have just, have to talk about some of the things that can go wrong. And so here they are. Those replace strings. As I mentioned last time, you can mess up a replace string. If you have a space, if you don't have a capital letter where it should be, if you use a bracket instead of a curly brace, any of those things will mess up the replace strings. The other thing is that I've seen people use the naming stuff, first name, last name, whatever, like excessively. Hi, Barry. Welcome to the course, Barry. It's really nice to meet you, Barry, and I can't wait to, learn with you this semester, Barry. Have a good time, Barry. You don't talk like that, so don't go crazy with replace strings. And what I've done lately, and I mentioned this last time, is I consider not using strings at all in the email body if I can help it. And the main reason for that has to do with the forwarding of the email that will break that replace string, and then they will see, initiating user first name or something like that. And so if you go back and look at this email that I just created here. In this email, there is no replace string, hoping that because it's going directly to the student, whoever that student might be, that it will seem personal enough. Congratulations, you're off to a good start. Well, not just a good start, but a jump start. You have the badge to prove it. Glad to see that you've earned this badge, et cetera, et cetera. So I could say, hi, and then put in the initiating user first name. And I actually have a string for that, so let me do it. And so I could put that in, so it would say, hi, Barry, or whoever the first name happens to be. But I'm getting kind of used to writing these things where I don't do that, try to make them seem personal enough so that the string, which works fine as long as it doesn't leave the system, basically, doesn't get forwarded out. I used to use strings a lot, and now I don't use them very often at all in that email body. So with one caveat, if I'm notifying myself, if this is an email to me, letting me know of activity in the course, well, yeah, absolutely use the strings then, because otherwise it won't tell you who did what. So in that case, I would say, hey, self, first name, last name, initiating user first name and last name in Accounting 101. So that's org unit name. I'd use all those strings so I know that this is the student who did, whatever it is that triggered the agent. So replace strings can be really helpful for you, and maybe you can avoid most of them except the email one. You have to use that in the agent. So what are those replace strings again? Things such as org name, which is your organization. I'd say Lake Erie College is an example. Org unit name, Accounting 101, Biology 1106, Microbiology, whatever it is you have your org unit name or your course named as. First name and last name, initiating user first and last, etc. Last course access date. So all of these. This is the window that will pop up when you click the little link that says, what replace strings can I use in the subject and body of my email? And I suggest you pop it up and you use your mouse if you're capable, and you copy and paste. That way you don't mistype and have, hi, initiating user first name. All right, number 2, if you are exporting a course, intelligent agents are not part of that course export package. All right, exporting your course. And so I say there, when is this a big deal? Because for a lot of people, it's not. For example, if you're exporting the course just so you have an archived copy of it, like of the student work from last semester, 5 years ago, or whenever, you don't need the intelligent agents. The intelligent agents not being part of that export has nothing to do with the student work that is included in the course. So no harm, no foul. But there is a time when exporting the course is, you'd like to have your agents. So one of the other times that you export a course is when you're going to reuse it, especially reuse it somewhere else, like not in the same D2L org. So if I'm teaching for college number 1, and then I start teaching a course or two for college number 2, and I've developed the greatest Accounting 101 course in the world, I can export it from college number 1 and import it to college number 2 and not have to start from scratch. And that's true, but my intelligent agents won't be there. And so I would have to build them again in org 2. So, and you can't copy from org 1 to org 2 because they don't speak to each other. You copy within one organization. So I can copy from fall semester to spring semester, or from Accounting 101 to Accounting 102, as long as they're all the same org. But once I'm at 2 different colleges or 2 different implementations of D2L, then export is how you get from one to the other, and agents don't export. So good to know. So there's a couple questions about copying, and we happen to have some answers here. When you're copying course components from an old course to a new one, or just from one course to another, the intelligent agents will get copied, but not all of the settings. Most of the settings will not get copied because they, depending on, it depends on what the copy is from, actually. So if I was copying from Accounting 101 to Accounting 102, and I had that agent of quiz 1, module 1, quiz 1, module 2 quiz, or whatever it was, unless, those aren't going to match in Accounting 201. And so it will break those. You have to reestablish some release conditions in that case. You'd have to change dates. You'd have to basically enable. You have to edit and enable the things, even if it worked great. So for example, you're just copying Accounting 101 from the fall to the spring. And so your agent should work because you're not changing names of assignments or anything like that. So your agent would work. They would copy from one to the other. They're still going to be disabled because you still probably have a little cleanup to do, things like dates and that sort of thing. So just know that you can copy from one course to another, but you've got a little bit of work to do after you do that. And that has to be within the same system. This is one I've just seen a lot, not as much lately, so maybe it's just kind of going away, but that org unit name in some places is based on some student record system code. So I've seen things like this, that you use that replace string org unit name, and instead of just saying classic literature, it says something like this. It's a reg code of 0023789, 2020 semester 1. And when that comes into the email, that's kind of bizarre. So I wouldn't use that org unit name. So you want to kind of test it and see what do my org unit names look like? Is it worth using, or should I just type out classic literature and leave it at that? All right, so those are 4 potential pitfalls. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to try to get through this. There's all kinds of people like you and me with ideas for intelligent agents. I picked a few, and there's a lot of them from the PI. If you're not familiar with the PI, that's the Product Idea Exchange. So the Product Idea Exchange is where customers tell us what they would like to see. David has posted a couple of things in, well, it wasn't just David, I guess. Let me see here. There's been a couple of pie, yeah, it was David, a couple of pie postings with a number where you can vote these things up. We're going to look at that in just a second. Hang on. But here's just a few. The higher the number, like here, D6123, 6123, that means it's newer. The smaller numbers are older. They've been there longer. So fairly new, org level agents and awards, so that an intelligent agent is only set at the course level. Awards are only awarded at the course level. And so this is a request so that at least those things could be done at the org level as well. In other words, college-wide agents and awards would be different than the current situation with course-specific agents and awards. 6112, data-aware agents. Basically, that means that I think this may be similar to the comment that I got earlier. If I wouldn't need to set dates on my agent if it just followed the dates on the quiz, for example. And it's not the way they work right now. That's kind of a request to make them work that way. I like 5830 a lot. I was having to set them up to like run daily and only do it once and do this kind of stuff. I would also like to be able to just set a day and a date in particular and say, all right, I want this to run one time and one time only on March 3rd. And then that's it. There is no repeating or anything else. That I think would be awesome. And I don't, there's a lot of complication in coding these things. That one seems to me like it's doable, but that's my non-coder saying that. So we just did well, David talked about bulk edit dates for agents, and he talked about release conditions, but I would say that's similar to being able to bulk edit the dates for intelligent agents. The not release condition for awards earned. We just set it up where a student earned an award and then they got an email. Notice that there was not a release condition for any student who did not yet earn an award. And so that would be a nice addition. It's 5338. Set a specific date and time for an agent to run. More powerful release condition combination. So the 4970 and 3799 is really interesting to me because it really is asking for more granularity on combining release conditions. Like I had 2 release conditions, both had to be met. It's nice where you could have some ands, ors, and even some groupings of if it does one of these 2 things and it does 2 of these 4 things, then it triggers. You can kind of ask for the world, but some of these are more, shall we say, possible than others. And then I put together this list of things kind of that are definitely on my list and have been on some other people's list as well. I do think there should be a replacement string for initiating user email that I can put in the body of my email, especially if I'm sending it to me, so that I basically just have a clickable link in order to send that student an email if I want to. Use my text expander and boom, 3 seconds, done. So a real probably pie in the sky is course instructor controlled runtime each day. And we're going to look at the settings because that'll answer another question here in just a minute. Option to send text instead of email. These are all emails right now. We know that students use text messaging. Most people use text messaging more. Now, texting wouldn't always work because if you're sending a long message, if you have some media embedded and all those sorts of things, it's going to need to be an email. But there could also be some quick messages that would be sent by intelligent agents that could possibly be text messages. Just like the notifications right now, students can use text or email or even both. So maybe there'd be a way to opt into those things. I'm going to bop back in here for just a second because we're going to look at the agent list here and the settings. So there was a question about how do you set the custom values. We talked about this in last week, but here it is again. If you don't do that, the default is kind of this black hole. And so you do want to set custom values so that whatever it shows up in the from is what you want it to say, but the reply to is the most important thing here, so that it replies directly to you, just like a normal email reply would do. But here is that wish list. The schedule agent runtime, it will tell you when they run for your institution. In my case, 3 o'clock Eastern time, 3 o'clock Toronto time, every day is when those agents would run. So my wish list is that that's actually a setting that you could control. Say, I want mine to run every day at 11:30 p.m., but somebody else wants to set theirs to run every day at whatever time they want it to do. I know that that is a server burden of some level. I don't know how huge and how horrible it would be, but it sure would be nice if those things were controllable at the course level as opposed to at the org level with that. So that's where that particular wish came from. And I think that what we're going to need to do is make sure that we don't have any leftover questions here because we're kind of right up against the hour. Let me take a look here. So that answered Iris's question about where the email comes from. And yep, course copy we talked about. Yeah, so David's talking about you can attach a video and audio recording. Yeah, so I actually find, at least the video I find problematic. It doesn't work for me. I mean, it's probably some configuration thing on my end. I tried to do it again today to make sure that I was right in saying that I can't get it to work. What I had on the wish list was that I had actually hoped that it would be, that you could embed something like a video note right in the email, visible, as opposed to a link that's really an attachment to the email. It's better than nothing as long as it works. I need to get mine to work, but that is, they're trying to make these intelligent aging emails a little bit more multimedia friendly. So Christina's asking if you can manually push it out and then run. So her question is, if I schedule it and it runs at that time, and in my case, 3 o'clock Eastern time is when it automatically runs every day, or whenever I set it, doesn't have to be every day, but I set it on the schedule. Can I also manually run it? And the answer is yes. So like if it was the end of the semester and I needed to have the agent, either communicate to me or to the students or something, and I could push that button every 5 or 10 minutes if I wanted to, and it will work just fine. So you can do both without any problem. So, and Chad's saying, send an email to instructors only. Well, the agent is course specific. It can only send emails to people who are in that course, or any emails that you can put any legitimate email address in the to. Okay, so I'm not sure that this is going to help you any, but I'm just going to pop back into one here and show you that email. Is that when I send an email, I can put any kind of email. If I want to have 5 people notified of whatever it is that the agent is looking for, I just put in 5 email addresses separated by commas, and and CC, BC, whatever I want. But keep in mind that the only thing that triggers it is something that happens in this course. And so unless they have access to the course, I'm not sure if it would be much value to them on what what that information is. For example, I know people that have included things like advisor emails, like if they have an advisor Dropbox, a single email where then they get a heads up that a student isn't attending or something. That's an email address that you can put in. Copying agents from one course to another is done in the copy components tool. So it's in the all course tools or edit course, whatever you call yours. And right here, import, export, copy components is how you copy from one course to another, all the different things, including intelligent agents. And let me see if I'm missing some others. I probably did. If you think I missed your question, pop it in there again, because I don't know if I'll find them all. Oh, well, you know what? Real quickly, and I know it's time, but I mentioned Pi. So the product idea exchange is part of the Brightspace community. It's one of the few things you actually need a community account to access. It's not just publicly facing. So you get a free account and you log in. And if you log into the community, and if I can get my toolbar to go away, if you log into the community, the product ideas exchange is right on the menu. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. So if you're looking at things for intelligent agents, you would choose that category and release conditions, they go together. And here's where you'll see some of the things that I was just talking about, as well as some of the other ones. You can sort them by the most recent ones, and they won't have very many votes because they're new. You could, the most active ones, which are things that are getting a lot of attention lately. Actually, this would be the ones that with the, no, active or lately, I think, and votes would be most votes all time sort of thing. So you can see like a lot of these have been released in the last couple of years. So that's a good thing. But you can then click through and find out, so here's one, they're gathering feedback on allowing students to view release conditions. So that's not an intelligent agent thing, that's a release condition thing, but they oftentimes go together, of course. So that's where you find the product ideas exchange. If you see something you like, you can vote them up. You can post comments, respond to other comments on there as to whether it's a good idea or not a good idea. And that's that. So I'm not seeing any more questions. We have been here a full 60 minutes. That seems like forever. And so I think we'll wrap it up. And thanks everybody for your time and attention. All right, and thank you for thanking me.